being in Korea, looking Asian and not being from here is it's not often you come across somebody like that. But yeah, so I have to say, so I grew up in England and born and raised in London, and pretty much grew up, you know, in a very Asian Chinese household, and then went to university doing internet engineering. So I thought that's what I really wanted to pursue, because I think I was 16 at the time and I saw my cousin coding in HTML, and she was making her own website, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. So I guess that could be the relation to tech. But for me, I felt as though it was just magical, you know, writing in a notepad with some text then magically transformed into a web page. And that to me was very fascinating. So I decided to go to university and study internet engineering. So at the time it was called Multimedia and Internet Systems Engineering. So very long name. But I did computer programming and a bit of artificial intelligence and a bunch of other things engineering related. And it ended up being very, very hard. It was very challenging for me. And I didn't enjoy it very much. I thought I would enjoy it a lot more. So when I graduated, I decided I didn't want to be a computer programmer, even though that would have earned me a lot more money than I ended up earning. But I ended up falling into marketing because I worked for a startup, and I stumbled across it being, you know, fresh out of university. I didn't know anything about what my career should look like, or kind of red flags, green flags to look for when it comes to looking for a job. So I just accepted the first job I got, and it was at a fashion magazine, which was online. It was an online blog. And so I became their marketing assistant. And so I did 3 years there, and then somehow fell into affiliate marketing. And then I ended up with a job at one of the biggest media agencies in the world, based in London. So I was very lucky to have gotten that job because I really wasn't qualified, I think, at the time. And then did 2 years there. And then I worked for a fashion company called All Saints, which came from the UK. It's a British fashion brand. It's all over the world as well. And it felt very cool doing that, you know, job, because it was a job that a lot of people wanted to do. So I felt like I had achieved a lot at that point in my life. I had, you know, an apartment in London. I had, you know, parties every weekend, and I had a good job. But for some reason, I still didn't feel fulfilled. And I think I came to the realization one summer when I felt very, as I said, just not content with life. And I thought on paper I had everything. So one day I got this inspiration, and that summer my grandma actually passed away, and she lived till 98, so she had a great life. I ended up just thinking, I want to just tick off something off my to-do list, my bucket list, sorry. I wanted to really travel the world. So I thought about that Sunday afternoon, and ended up on Monday morning quitting my job, and then just buying a one-way ticket, and I flew to Southeast Asia, and I backpacked for 7 months on my own, having at that point never been camping before. I'd never traveled on my own. I'd never done anything like it. And the whole time I've been a city girl, and then suddenly I turned into this girl with just a backpack of belongings on her back, and that's all I had for 7 months. So pretty drastic life decision, I would say. I'm not someone that really thinks things through properly when it comes to big decisions, I think, which is a good and a bad thing. I wasn't really fearful. And so I made a huge life decision to just, you know, pause everything in London and give up this really good job. And I went to Southeast Asia. I traveled 7 countries. It was amazing. It changed my life. And I really, really recommend it to anyone. You know, at that point in my career, I'd already worked for a while and I wanted a break. So anyway, long story short, I got a lot of inspiration from kind of traveling different countries. I saw that there were so many different cultures out there that I had no idea about. And growing up in London, I was exposed to a lot of cultures, but at the same time, London life is just the same pretty much if you have a certain lifestyle there. So I was so inspired. I came back and started my own business with my sister. That was a Korean culture subscription box. And at that time, we were very early to the market. It was a product that some people wanted and a lot of people did want, but it was something that people weren't willing to pay for just yet. And so we ran that for 6 years. It was a very interesting time, and it won us a place on the accelerator program called Techstars, which is quite well known. They have programs in like 40 cities all over the world, and they were just starting in Korea. So during the pandemic in 2020, we managed to win a place on Techstars. And so I managed to get out of lockdown in London and fly to Korea and come here to do the accelerator program, but I ended up never leaving. So I've been here almost 4 years now because of that initial, being accepted onto that program. It changed my life again, and ended up staying here, running my business, and ended up not working out in terms of my business and the longevity of it. But it was an incredible 6 years. I learned so much. And then I decided to utilize my knowledge as a foreigner and my startup experience to then work for other startups in Korea and help them understand the global market a bit better. So I positioned myself in that way, have had a few roles since then in Korea. But my baby and my business has been the biggest sort of learning curve of my life, I would say. Those 6 years were very long and very well spent, I would say. And I have a lot of wisdoms because of it. So I wouldn't change a thing. But yeah, that was a very long introduction, but that's who I am. That's how I view myself, I guess, and that's how I introduce myself to other people, albeit a bit long-winded, but hopefully that gave you a little bit of insight.
No, that's amazing because I have so many questions right now.
I'm ready, Dimitri, I'm ready.
I have so many that at some point I started like reciting them to just like not forget them. But I think I forgot a couple from the beginning. But it's really like, where do I start? Well, first of all, I think like let's start from the end. You said your baby, your startup. Like, did you really mean a baby or?
No, I meant my only baby in life has been my business.
Oh,
I've had
okay.
no other
I
babies.
because I was like, I didn't know she had a child.
I refer to my business as my baby a lot,
Okay,
and it does sound strange. I do realize.
Just wanted to clear it out. Yep. And that's great. That's awesome. And now I understand. I mean, I certainly from that introduction, I got to understand you a bit more about why you were successful, and looking a bit like forward. I think your ability to pivot in life, your ability to actually change the course of your life and like influence it. I think that's the most powerful ability that you have to be successful with startups, because startups are really about pivoting, about finding your way, right? Finding your niche. And you're really great at finding your niche, as I see from your introduction. And the first thing like that came to my mind when I thought that, oh, she's great at finding like her niche, was why, like, maybe that's kind of a service for the IT community, IT members who are watching, but just out of like respect to what they are doing and everything. Like, I wanted to refer to that decision of yours when you decided that you didn't want to pursue internet engineering anymore and decided to pivot for I think it was like one of the first pivots in your career, right? To actually like graduate with that degree and then say, I don't want to do it. So what was the backbone of this decision? Why exactly did you, what tipped you off? What tipped you off, let's say?
That is a great question. And I think it is not to be downplayed how investing 3 years of your life to study a degree and then literally throwing it all away and doing something completely different could be viewed as such a massive waste. It is in a lot of ways. I think for me, it comes back to what I said earlier, which is that I don't think I fully, I don't process fear in terms of making a big life decision in the same way as a lot of other people. I tend to make snap decisions based on intuition, which is definitely could be as bad of a thing as it could be good. And so I chose to study internet engineering because of my cousin just coding HTML in front of me and me being fascinated. I didn't do any research into what it included. And so I signed up onto a course that essentially what it needed as a prerequisite was A-level physics and A-level mathematics, which I didn't do. I did A-level biology, business studies, sociology, and psychology, which are very different subjects.
Right, they are.
And I did not have any A-level mathematics knowledge whatsoever. I graduated with, I think it was a B in GCSE maths, which is, when you're 16, you do GCSEs. And I was never good at maths, and I did not know I enrolled on a course that required such a high level of mathematics. So I remember very distinctly when I got to university, very first semester, very first lesson, the lecturer in front of me was writing differentiation and integration something on the board. And I remember thinking, I have no idea what this is. And I remember he was talking about binary ones and zeros, and it was the first ever time I'd heard of such a thing.
Oh, wow.
And everyone was acting like this is ABCs. And I thought, oh no, what have I gotten myself into? And so it turned out that degree somehow accidentally accepted people onto the course that didn't have the prerequisites. And so I was one of those people. So for the next 3 years, I felt like the biggest imposter. I suffered greatly when it came to all of my homework, all of my tuitions. Everything felt like I was, when you're running a marathon and everyone's like 5 miles ahead of you or 10 miles ahead of you and you're only just getting started. That's what it felt like. So by the time I finished, I managed to graduate and, and everything. But I felt as though I'm done being an imposter. I need to find something else. And so I decided to look for a job in something else. And I think at the time it was content editor. That was the role at this startup. And I didn't know it was a startup. I think they advertised themselves as an established company. And I also knew nothing about startups at that time. I was like 20 or 21. So the startup then ended up enabling me to pivot some more. I pivoted about 10 times in that company just because I was working next to the CEO, and whatever he wanted, I did. So I did affiliates, I did a bit of like creative writing, and I managed a team, and then I put together some parties. I was just whatever he needed me to be. So I think pivoting, it came early on in my life for sure.
That's impressive that you decided to go through this degree that you thought that you didn't, deserve in some way. And also after that, you decided to pivot, like not be an imposter, as you said. And for some people that is unthinkable because being an imposter is all they know. And, I know people like that. I've met them, and they know how to be an imposter so well that it kind of becomes their true nature, being an imposter always, all the time, fake it till you make it mentality.
Right.
I think this mentality is quite prominent among, especially like IT and software, because I see across the globe in different parts of the world, they complain about IT specialists, even in Russia, I read a lot of Russian posts about that. They complain, HR managers complain about IT specialists, software developers, lying about their jobs, about their experiences, and even education on their resume. And I think it's like quite prominent among them, among like different specialists, but among IT, like in particular, to be an imposter, to always pretend that you know more, and then learn on the fly, and then go with it. Because I think the essence of IT is one of the, like, let's say, characteristics of IT is that people don't know what other people are doing most of the time. It's like, oh yeah, I'm on back end. I know what you're doing on front end, but I'm not as proficient as you are. So it creates a lot of like people, like tower of knowledge kind of people who are the only person at the startup who know what they're doing. And that's why people pretend like they prefer to fake things and get into the position where they gain power and then become the tower of knowledge who actually knows things, like how things work, or maybe doesn't, but other people don't know either. So I think it's like quite important for you to be like, I'm quite impressed with you being honest with yourself, because on paper you have a degree, on paper you have everything to be the specialist in that field, and it takes a lot of gut and a lot of moral principles to actually say, no, I will not do that, because that's not who I am. That's not what I like. So that's great. That's actually quite impressive. And
yeah, I think you speak to a lot of truth, just because, as you say, the IT and tech specialists, they're specialists, right? They seem like experts. You go to them thinking that they know much more than you. And I think that there's this really funny TV show, by the way, just random tangent, called The IT Crowd. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's a British TV show about the IT sort of stereotype and how they're treated, and how people perceive them. And I think it's hilarious. So I always thought, though, just going back to what you said, is that I always felt insecure about myself because I've done so many different things, because I've pivoted so many times that I'm not an expert in anything. Like I've never considered myself an expert in anything. And so I get insecure around people who have done just one thing their whole lives because they've dedicated all their time to that craft and they know everything that there is to know, or as much as it, can be possible. But for me, I've just tried so many things and I'm just this jack of all trades but master of none. So I guess, and I think your previous podcast episode, someone talked about being insecure or not being secure enough. I think we all struggle with that, whether you're an expert or not expert. I think that, we all have some imposter syndrome to a certain degree, right?
Right, we do. And one more question I had about like your introduction part, because it was I would say, I don't know how to describe it. It was so wholesome and also like quite broad about yourself. I didn't know like most of the details. I mean, we didn't talk about your past, obviously, but also I didn't expect many of the details to be like that. And like, what would you say were the most important skills that you took from job to job, from one sector to another sector, and that kept you alive and thriving in all of your positions? What would you say like the skill set?
Right, yeah. I think that I can probably divide it up pre-entrepreneur to post-entrepreneur because they're very different chapters. Pre-entrepreneur definitely was a pretty green corporate kind of employee, someone who's just had a few years experience and doing marketing. Honestly, marketing is not rocket science. Anyone can do marketing. I mean, it's you can learn on the job. And so I remember very distinctly, this is a very weird fact, but I'm not trying to show off, but I think every interview I've had, I've either gotten the job or I've been told that it was very good and I should wait a bit longer for the job opening to come up, or something to do with there be a referral or something. So essentially, I think I figured out that I was good at interviewing quite early on. And I think it has to do with, I mean, I wasn't that confident in all of my interviews. I definitely struggle with confidence, especially early in my, early years. So I think it had to do with genuineness and potentially likability. My CV having engineering on it really helped, though, I must admit. I think that really impressed people just looking at your CV. And then the other thing was being able to answer interview questions well. I think that even if you might not be the best candidate, I think having a good, likable attitude and a professional, timely response to the interview process, but also turning up and looking like you're ready to do the job. I think that really helped. Because I did marketing, it ended up transferring quite well for the pre-entrepreneur part. And I'd say post-entrepreneur, my journey, I think being a startup founder really gets you quite far as well. It just sounds cool, I think. And also the various elements you have to deal with when being a founder means that you are someone who is very malleable and reliable, and creating your own business is not easy. So proving that you've done that and proving some sort of traction usually gets you some level of attention and some level of respect. So I think showing that you can do that really does garner a lot of, it can garner opportunities for yourself. And I think that definitely relating to people and networking is another really big thing. Knowing the right people, getting that warm introduction really helps as well. So yeah, I can't honestly say it was down to one thing. If I look back and join the dots, I think it was a mixture of all of these things and luck for me. I didn't really have a strategy going into it. I just kind of did it. So it's very interesting you asked me, because now I'm reflecting on all of this and I'm like, yeah, wow, okay. I got to where I am now. It is, right? Yeah, for sure.
Great. Now, jumping on to the part where you said that you started traveling and experiencing new things for the first time in your life, and doing it as if you were an experienced traveler. That actually is fascinating, because I think, again, it proves that you are able to pivot, you're able to adapt, you're able to know exactly what you want, even though it's something that wasn't in your paradigm before, like completely out of your scope of interest. So my question was, if there was one, takeaway from the travels, what would that be?
There were so many takeaways. I mean, 7 months doesn't sound like a long time, but every week, I would say, every day, every week, every month, I started to peel back the layers of who I thought I was and was morphing into a new person as that journey went on. I know that sounds so poetic. It's very Eat, Pray,
No,
Love.
that's awesome.
It's very Julia Roberts.
That
but
is awesome.
It is it's a cliche, but at the same time, it's very true that if you put yourself outside of your comfort zone and if you broaden your horizon and also a bit of solitude sprinkled in there and meeting tons of new people in new settings can really stretch your horizon as a person and can really bring you to new reflections and introspections about yourself. So I would say the main takeaway, I think, was the thing that stayed with me the longest was it always pays to conquer your fear. And what I mean by that is that, we have a lot of fears inside of us that are limiting us to do things that are beyond, as you say, beyond your scope, beyond your paradigm. And who I became on my travels was someone I never would have dreamed I could become. So I'll give you a few examples. My first month was the hardest month because I'd lived my whole life in London. Everything is, a certain type of way. It's very, comfortable. It's convenient. It's where I grew up. There isn't a lot of discomfort in London for me. And so when I was in Thailand, I remember this very clearly. I had never shared a room with anybody before up until this point. I'd never been camping, as I mentioned. So I was sharing a hostel room with about 10 other people. And it was mixed men and women. And I had never experienced so many sounds, so many smells, so many, fears of someone's going to steal my passport or who's this weird guy stumbling at 3 a.m. like drunk. There was lots of things that I was very, very scared about, but I met the best people on that trip. I can count, so many international friends I have living in different places all over the world because I met them through my backpacking travels that I would see again in a heartbeat, And then another example of how I conquered my fear was I have this massive phobia of open water. So I've never swum in the sea before up until this point. And I'm not very adventurous when it comes to sports or water sports or anything, but on a random whim decided to get a scuba diving license in Thailand. And so I went to this island called Koh Tao, did a 3.5-day scuba diving course. And at the time, again, like my engineering degree, I thought it was going to be a good idea. But then by the time I put on all the gear and it was time to finally descend into the ocean because we practice in a swimming pool, I started to get a panic attack because I realized we were really finally going down into the depths of the ocean and I could see the rope going down and we were supposed to hold onto the rope and go down bit by bit and equalize the pressure in our ears and stuff. And I could see everyone else doing it, no problem. And I just thought, no, I can't do this. I actually can't. So I asked to go back up. I couldn't breathe, I just had that panic attack. And then my teacher was super kind. She said, look, take a break, go back on the boat and think about it. If you really want to do it, I'll come down with you again. I'll do it again with you, but I'll take these guys down first. So I went back up on the boat and I thought to myself, look, firstly, you're such a failure, Alice. You've made it this far, traveled, all the way to Thailand and you're not going to do this really cool activity. At the same time, the fear was so real. Like I felt it in my chest. It was so heavy. But I saw how everyone else was doing it and I thought, what's so different about them? I could be like them. And so I just gave myself a pep talk on that boat. I think must have been 20 minutes. They came back up and I said, I want to go down. Can you come down with me again to the teacher? So she said, yeah, of course, let's go down. And so the second time I had to breathe, like really, really regulate my breathing. I had to tell myself, Alice, you can do this. You can do this. I was like coaching myself, giving myself a pep talk. And I basically just somehow forced myself to go down there. And once I was down there, man, the ocean is beautiful. So I was seeing all these gorgeous fishes swimming by me and it was just unbelievable scenery. And I just forgot about my fear completely. And I came back up and I had such a high because I was like, I actually did it. I did it. And then getting the license and doing, I think it was 3 more dives, finally cemented that I could get over this fear, this amazingly crushing fear that I had. Just 3 days ago, I became a different person. So I think that was something I experienced quite early on in my travels. That was during the first month. after that, I just kept referring back to that moment that if I came across something fearful again, and there was many things, riding a motorbike in Thailand or climbing mountains in Vietnam, I don't know, like there were so many things. I just went back to that moment and thought, it's not that bad. Like you can get over it, and once you do, you'll feel like you've just broken new limits, and you'll feel like a new person. Exactly. And so I do think, sometimes life gives you these lessons, and if you're able to get through it, then you can be very surprised with yourself.
No, that was definitely one of the highlights of my podcasting experience. I'd say the whole description of you overcoming your fears. It's so familiar to me because I have this crippling fear of heights. Oh. And I went to the UK, and that's like that's a funny story because you come from the UK, and I conquered my fear coming to the UK too.
Oh, do tell.
I went there, and I was in 8th grade. I was 15, and I had this crippling fear of heights and everything. Everything higher than 2 meters was basically too high for me. I couldn't really walk by the edge or of anything, any surface that was lifted up. So I was there, and we were staying at some kind of school outside of London, somewhere in the country, and at the school they had these facilities, where children could play. And there was this high, really tall tower, basically just a log, a tall log, about maybe 7 to 10 meters, tall. But for me, it was insurmountable. But people were climbing that with just one rope attached to them, for safety. Yeah. And for me, that wasn't enough at all. I didn't feel secure doing that. I didn't feel safe. And I was shaking there. I was shaking. I was sweating. Even girls did that. Everyone did that. I was like, I'm shaking. I don't know if I can do it. And there was this guy who was, the overseer of the group. And he said, well, man, it's fine. It's okay. We any group has this one person who cannot do it. It's okay. And I'm like, well, no, actually, it's not okay. I don't want to be the one person. And I want to make this group the only group probably that doesn't have this person. So I just went up, climbed it, and it had this kind of euphoria that you described too, euphoria of overcoming your fear. I can do anything. And it was pretty chilly, the UK, it was in November, so it was quite chilly. Yeah. But when I came down, I didn't feel anything. Didn't feel any temperature, anything. I was just I'm still chasing this kind of, feeling that I felt back then. But the first time is just amazing. It's inexplicable how it opens your horizons. And I think your experience is just awesome. It's awesome. It's one of the things that I think I will remember for life. The experience of a person who is afraid of depth, but went to the depth, to the ocean, not depth, open ocean, but you went to the open ocean. And I think that is maybe a cornerstone of your success. If I can guess, I can get make an assumption that that's probably why you are successful with your startups, because you overcome your fear every time, right? Probably in everyday life, you also have some fears that you overcome. And as you mentioned, this one skill to overcome your fear is so essential for you. And startups are basically that, right? Overcoming your fear that, well, if I invest money and it doesn't work out, then I'm losing money, right? And that's a fear. So what are the kinds of fear, or maybe examples of fear that you overcame during your startup career? When at the point of inception of a startup, you definitely had something going on in your mind and soul, right? So what was that kind of maybe anxiety, maybe something that you overcame and you remember distinctly?
Yeah, I think for sure you're absolutely right. I mean, startups are so risky, and fear is in so many places. Every decision you make, there is something that you could lose. And I think for me, I think to preface this, I'm introverted, so I may not appear it. A lot of people don't think I am, but my MBTI is INTP. And so when I did the MBTI test, I think 6-7 years ago, I was about 80% introverted, and I did it recently again, and I'm about 62% introverted. So I've actually decreased my introvertedness over time because I've kept putting myself back in this baptism of fire of meeting people, connecting with people, networking. As I mentioned earlier, I really do think my entrepreneurial journey has taught me one thing, which is networking is super important. And so through lots of reasons, Techstars being one of them, I had to put myself out there, but it was never easy from the beginning. And I think one thing that gave me a lot of anxiety, and I think when you mentioned the word anxiety, I think that's what really brought up the memory for me why it was so fearful, was that I felt very uncomfortable in other people's presence. When I had to represent my business and, as I mentioned earlier, like quote unquote being the expert, when you have your own business, you're meant to be the expert of your own business. And there is a certain perception that you need to uphold, which is that you should know your business inside out. You should know all your numbers. You should know how to pitch your business. You should know how to sell yourself, how to sell your business. And so, and I think that it's not always easy from the beginning because everyone starts somewhere, and beginner entrepreneurs won't have all of those skill sets right off the bat. So for me, I felt it was very uncomfortable when I was put in certain situations where I had to present my business, like pitching, for example, presentations, or speaking to mentors and trying to pitch your business to a partner, potential partner. Those situations made me very anxious because I was always perceiving and assuming that they would ask me questions I wouldn't know the answer to, and then I would look really stupid, and then they wouldn't give me any credibility, and then they won't believe in us. So I think I placed a lot of pressure on myself, and I think looking back now, we need to give more grace to ourselves at that moment, especially if you're just starting out, because you really won't have everything honed from the beginning. But we can try, we can definitely put more effort. And I definitely think a podcast like this, other resources out there can help you understand what the journey of an entrepreneur could be like. And arming yourself with tons of resources around, how to write a great pitch deck, how to, hone your presentation skills, how to have better conversational skills, how to hold yourself in a professional meeting. Those are all very different aspects of learning, but is necessary because you will need to use those skills at some point, and it would be good to hone it as quickly as possible, because then you'll make the most of opportunities. But definitely understand that it's a work in progress. And for me, that took years. I say I ran my business for 6 years. It was really at least 3 or 4 of those years, I wasn't good at those things. Mm-hmm. And that was mostly because I stayed at home in London where we worked. We worked from home. We didn't make any effort with networking at that time because we were both, my sister and I, who ran the business together, we were co-founders and co-CEOs. We were both introverted, and we were both so introverted. She's even more introverted than I was. Maybe she was 90% introverted, which is just a terrible combination overall, because I do think CEOs, the more successful ones, tend to be extroverted, right? Because they are natural around other people. They get lots of energy from people. Therefore, they can handle way more meetings. And we can't avoid the fact that, to be a successful startup, you do have to connect with people. You do have to make those. Area. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And so I do think that there is a whole theory that I have that introverted CEOs struggle a lot more. And I would love to, delve into that more later. In my career, I would love to dedicate more time to that. But for me, that was one of my biggest fears. And it took a lot of honing and a lot of being around people, a lot of pitching, a lot of practice before I then cracked it, And even now, I do get nervous for lots of things. If I'm a panel speaker or somebody that, people are going to be listening to me, lots of eyes on me, yeah, for sure, we'll get nervous. And that's very normal. But I think that did give me a lot of anxiety from the beginning, and I had to work really hard on working on
that. You described a lot of, that took you a lot of work, definitely, to overcome this anxiety. And I think it's very common among people who are introverted, and especially like among IT community as well. Generally, like when you see someone pitching for IT startup, they are so anxious and they're like so paranoid about stuff which other people have no idea about. So like I've seen people learn by heart the API calls that they're using, or some other technical details of their startups. But generally people, investors and other people who are stakeholders, they don't care about that stuff. So I think this is, along with practice, along with like daily overcoming overcoming things and hurdles daily on a daily basis, it's also quite important to understand something like internally, on a more high level, that nobody cares. In the beginning, nobody cares about you, and you make them care about you. So why would you worry too much about pitching? And that for me worked. Like, I'm not a startup founder, but definitely like works with connecting with people, networking, even organizing something like foreign IT and tech specialist group in Korea. Like, why worry so much if I'm just trying to appeal to a group of people who I don't know, who don't know me yet, but they will know me, and I will make them care about what I'm doing, just by doing it. So that helps me a lot personally, like to get in terms with, like when you're sitting there and just deciding whether to invite someone or not, or whether to organize an event or not. And I just say, fuck it, like people don't care. So I don't care, like right now, just as they do, kind of homogenize myself with them, adopt their stance, and say, there's a guy who just posted some bullshit events on his group. So who cares? And when I see that with my eyes, like, oh yeah, actually people wouldn't care that much, and then I post it and then people care, I'm actually excited even more. So it's kind of like not downplaying my expectations, but adopting their stance and thinking from their perspective. So like, what's this internal thing like for you, like this understanding? Because obviously when you practice things, yes, you do get over some fears, but this fundamental understanding that allowed you to completely overcome, or maybe like not completely overcome, but like significantly reduce this anxiety and fear, like this internal understanding or principle. Do you use empathy, or do you use just like fuck it mentality, or what's the secret to start a founder?
That's definitely a big question. I think for me, the turning point came at the 4th year when we won the place on the accelerator program. So everything changed from that point onwards. Prior to that, we were just struggling founders at home in our living room trying to make things work. And I would say we got a lot of ground doing that, because the first 3 months of our business going up and running, we actually got so many emails from people all over the world. At first, we delivered just to the UK, our Korean culture boxes. And we got quite a lot of demand coming in, which signaled to us that there was some product market fit that was happening elsewhere. And we opened up international shipping, and that just suddenly boomed. Like, we were delivering to 5, 10, 15 countries within the first few months. That shocked us. We weren't expecting such a thing. But other than that, gaining that momentum slowly bit by bit, we were really still just 2 sisters working in our living room at home. We had no other foundation anywhere else. We had no partners supporting us. We try to just do everything ourselves. And I'd say that we definitely put so much work in for quite a little output when it came to comparing it to the later years. So once we won a place on Techstars, we had to fly to Korea. We joined a cohort of 9 other companies, and we had the first month of the 3-month program, which is, the first month is about meeting mentors, and it's called Mentor Madness. And the second month is about, once you've picked your mentors, then honing your pitch deck and honing your business model and getting as much mentorship as possible and accelerating your business. And then the third month is about the demo day and getting ready for being in front of investors and pitching yourself. So the first month was the most pivotal month, because we were pushed into this massive discomfort zone where we had to meet 100 mentors in a month. And that meant that we went from being super shy introverts, hermit in a shell, no one to ever speak to us. We didn't want to speak to anybody, sadly, to suddenly being put in front of 100 people in a month. And that was only mentors. It didn't include anybody else from the program. It didn't include having meetings of our own and other people that the mentors introduced us to. So I'd say probably 200 people, let's say, we met in 1 month. That's 10 people per day, at least. So, counting just weekdays. But that month made us feel so exhausted and so uncomfortable and so pushed to our limits that we could barely handle it. We were like, it felt like running a marathon every single day. We could barely conjure up the energy because we were usually used to spending all of our energy just to ourselves, and suddenly sharing it with everyone else meant that we were spread to the thinnest we've ever spread. However, we learned so much during that month that was the most accelerated process for us as entrepreneurs, as founders. I would say I grew the most in that month. And it was the most invaluable experience ever. There's no money that I think I could have spent to get that same experience other than winning a place on that accelerator program. And so we were connected with the smartest, most inspiring, most relevant people in the industry who gave up 20, 30 minutes of their time for free to talk to us and try to give us as much advice as possible. Not only did I learn so much from these people, but we ended up opening all these doors to other opportunities, other partnerships, other potential mentors, and just making tons of friends and networks in just a short space of time, just 1 month. And that, I would say, was the foundation for the secret recipe for success, as you said, because we started to compound our network, and suddenly like 100 times, 1,000 times our net worth in terms of the network, we then realized that their opportunities are limitless, and that we can connect to, the kind of like power of the network, and the degrees of separation became much smaller because Korea is pretty small when it comes to the entrepreneurial world. And so we then started connecting with big connectors, which then connected us to other people. And so it became a kind of the start of the high of networking for me. I now see it as a way to sort of gamify myself in a way. I like to try to maximize every networking opportunity. I try to connect to as many cool people as possible. I just think there's no end to it. I just want to keep meeting cool people, keep having inspiring conversations, because it can only be a gain for me. And try to obviously offer value and stuff like that. So for me, it was about starting to interact with people that were in business and doing cool things. And over that time, learn who I am and learn the art of engaging with people in a meaningful way. And that is, how to build a genuine connection, how to offer value to someone, how to, attract someone that could offer value to you in a way that makes sense for them. The reciprocal effect, I guess it could be called, which is you offering value and someone offers you value back. It's a great potential partnership. So for me, it was about learning the art of that. And that is very powerful when it comes to entrepreneurship, because this is how you unlock opportunity and this is how you get to the next level. So in my opinion, yes, that part was the biggest sort of baseline for the jump off point, I guess, to when things changed. And you just gain so much just from talking to people. I think you can learn so much just from having a conversation with someone that is in a different field to you, or same field but different stage. I think it's always a good idea to broaden your horizons in that way. So for me, I think that would be the foundation of it all.
That relates to, I see a lot of connection here, and I kept thinking while you were talking about what's there are 3 types of people according to Malcolm Gladwell, his book The Tipping Point. Have you read it?
I have, yes, but please remind me. I forget a lot of it.
It's 3 types of people who make something viral, but I think that applies to startup a lot too, because startup is essentially something that small and went a little bit viral, or viral, really viral. So he says that some the people who make things go viral and go over this tipping point where something was completely unknown to something that was known, it's the first type is connectors, the second type is mavens, and the third type is marketers. So connectors are people who connect people. And I think I myself am a connector. I just remember a lot about people. I like to know people. I like to give them, opportunity to talk. And even, in events, I just try to give stage to people, connect them actually. Maybe it's not that important for me to, introduce myself compared to other people introducing themselves to each other, and me being just there, giving them an opportunity to talk. So I think of myself as a connector. I know a lot of people. I know what they're doing, so I can connect them. And I have seen a lot of proof of that trait of mine I'm wondering, what type of person are you? Because mavens are more people who like know things in depth, so they know exactly where to get, let's say, the best table, or what's the best price for this hotel, or like what's the best price for everything, or some other characteristics of things, so they know where to get the best items, like essentially. And marketers are people who, I don't remember exactly, but I think it's just speaks for itself, like marketer. So they go and they know how to market things. They know how to organize the campaign, what kind of assets, what kind of photos to put there, and everything. So what kind of what kind of person are you, and how does it play into your startup like experience? Or maybe you are like a completely different person. Maybe you're a blend of several things.
Yeah, that's a really interesting like concept. I think I might be a blend of two. And I think I originally started off as a marketer, not to be, obvious that I was a marketer and that's the type of person I am. But I think what you just described there in terms of the marketer is someone that can kind of frame things in a way that it would be delivered in a palatable way. I think that's something that I have been doing. I think the reason why I got the first job and the second job, the reason why I thought I fell into it, that's what I say often when people ask me, why did you make these career changes? Because they're not that logical when you look at it, is because I framed the opportunity and how I would fit into it. With retrospect, I think I must have framed it decently for me to get that job, because in a lot of senses, it doesn't make sense. And so I think in startups, it's important to know how to frame yourself and how to frame your product and your service. And then it goes back to what I was saying earlier, being genuine and being likable is really important. And a lot of it is, I think a lot of people think that bluffing and lying is a part of, faking it till you make it, as you said earlier. There is that, approach as well. But I like to think of it as framing is more important than bluffing or lying. I think it's about putting your positive traits forward. It's about understanding the other person and what they're looking for, and then positioning yourself and your business and your services, if it makes sense, to appeal most to them. And so I think that's an important thing to do. And as a marketer, I think somehow I've managed to do that. And then later in life, I think I became a connector, because I'm only just starting that phase of life now. Since I've networked quite a bit in the last few years, I'm only just starting to become someone that connects other people, like you said earlier. And you're really great at that. You're great at bringing people together, and you don't need any of the spotlight yourself, I can tell. And I guess you find great joy in bringing people together. And I think me and you share that, which is quite nice. And I think that when we were at events together, you can really see the harmony between everyone, because you're there to bring people together. So I find immense fulfillment, and I find it very rewarding when people meet each other through something that I've brought together. And I think that's important later in life to be able to give back that value. But at the beginning, for sure, connecting with the right people and framing yourself in a way, pitching yourself and selling yourself well, will get you those initial doors to open to then lead to those other opportunities that we all need, essentially.
So you're a blend of two things, as you think, right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, based on your description.
And it's interesting, like with your sister, you started the business with your sister, right? So how would you describe her like involvement, and how did she bring value to it? And just generally, was the place where I'm coming from right now is because I have a brother, and we have a lot of ideas, like joint business ideas together. And some of the ideas could like play out well, some of them couldn't. It's just like the distance is so huge that it's just not viable to do business together, because we're like separated by 5,000 kilometers or something. And but also I think that not for every couple of siblings it works. Some siblings are just not in a good dynamics with each other, like they're fighting, or maybe they're not fighting, but they're just hating each other's guts. So for you, like, how did it work? And what was your role, like how she complemented your maybe shortcomings in terms of business and everything like that?
I'm really glad you asked that, Dimitri, because it is an interesting story. And I do think it's very true. A lot of family members aren't meant to be in business together. People do warn people of, don't go to don't go into business with family, can get very complicated. That is very true. It's certainly very true. But for us, we have a 7-year age gap, first of all. So there is a clear distance there as well. In terms of our upbringing, we never shared many similarities because of how we had very different life stages, but and so we weren't very close, and we also used to fight a lot as well. So definitely share your sentiments.
She's the older one?
She's the younger one.
She's the younger one. Oh,
yeah. So I'm the older sister that knows everything, and she's supposed to listen to me, that kind of thing. So there's definitely egos there, and there's definitely lots of sibling rivalry that can come in. But what's interesting is that our MBTIs firstly are quite similar, but there's one key letter that's very different. So I am INTP and she is INFP. So I'm a thinking person and she's a feeling person. And that used to be something we'd clash over a lot. But what I think the magic of how we came together is that she came up with the idea firstly. So she got inspired by Korea. She visited Korea when she was at university, and she came and it just felt like the culture was so amazing that she wanted to bring it to everyone else around the world.
Is she in Korea now?
Oh, yeah, she's in Korea now. Yeah, she's living.
So you're still doing business together?
We don't anymore, but we still catch up a lot and see each other a lot. But what happened was she was inspired by Korea. At the very same time, I had gone backpacking. So I told that story earlier. That was happening all at the same time. And so I came back from backpacking inspired by other cultures, and while she was inspired by Korea. So she told me, look, I want to start this business. It's a Korean culture subscription box. And because I had previously started my own business, so I didn't actually mention this earlier, but I had a Korean fashion business when I was at that media agency. I started that with my friend, and she and I ran it together for 2 years, too early to the market. It was in 2012, just before Gangnam Style hit the world. And we were really into K-fashion back then, but no one else was. And so when Gangnam Style suddenly went viral, everyone's like, this pop, K-pop thing. But they still weren't ready for K-fashion. The K-pop wave had only just begun, and it was very infant in its, the stage. So anyway, so I had that random startup for 2 years, and it failed massively. So I got over that. And because my sister was fresh out of university, and I thought, you know what, I can tell you what to do because I've done it before, that kind of system mentality. And I had just come back from backpacking. I had no job. I was just chilling at home. And I thought, why not? Why not help my sister out? Let's see how this works. Let's not make any big commitments. I'm not going to say that I'm going to get a job out of this. I'll just help you out. And what happened was we both entered a very relaxed agreement where we would just do whatever we felt comfortable with and whatever we felt we could add value to. And let's not put a title to it. So I didn't have a job title for the first, I want to say like 6 months to 8 months or even a year. I just did whatever I felt I could do. And so naturally what happened was, because my sister is a feeling type, she's very creative. She comes up with the concepts and how the brand visuals should look and what the product should look like, and where the product comes from in terms of the inspiration. She's very good at that. I'm not very artistic. I'm not very creative, but I am very logical and I'm very thinking. And so I took care of the spreadsheets, and I started to slowly do the logistics, and I did the financial forecasts, and then I started to look at shipping and what else did I do? I did marketing, obviously, because that's where I came from. And then I suddenly discovered that I really enjoyed talking to customers because I really loved getting to know them. And so then I slowly took over customer experience. So my sister started handling more the creative side of things, the writer team, because we had a magazine, the sourcing of the product, because she wanted to control what the product looked like, the brand visuals, the photography, everything. And then I did all the marketing, logistics, and customer experience. And that suddenly covered about 90% of the business.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. The only thing left was things that we both really hated, which is tax and accounting.
Right.
Don't we all hate that? I mean, unless you're a tax and accountant. So
they do. They hated the
it was the most boring part of our business. We both hated it. We hated invoices and having to submit it and stuff. But anyway, so we naturally fell into that. And what we found is that our MBTI really helped us, like understanding each other and understanding ourselves really helped, because we were both intuitive and we were both introverted. So we understood that that's how our energy gets drained and how we spend our time. And then being intuitive meant that we perceive the world in a very similar way. And I think this is really important to make a point about that. If you're going to find a co-founder, find someone that sees the world the same way you do, or at least has the same mission as you, has the same goals as you, has the same values as you as much as possible. And because we came from the same family and because we really believed in spreading culture to different people and trying to bring the world together, it helped so much, because in any situation we were in, any challenges we came across, we knew that that was our North Star. We knew that that's what we were trying to do. So there's no question about it. We never fought over that. What we did fight over, though, would be the fact that I'm thinking brained. So I'm logical and I see things as A plus B equals C. You know, why would it be any other way? Whereas she's much more feeling and creative based. And so a lot of the times I didn't understand her decisions because she was basing it on a feeling, and she wouldn't understand my logical process because I had mapped it all out. So, you know, there would be that clash, but I think we made the perfect team because I covered those thinking functions and she covered those feeling functions. I think we complemented each other really well. That's how we became co-CEOs. And I know that going through Techstars, they did not recommend anyone be co-CEOs because one person should be CEO, shouldn't be two people. But in our case, everyone agreed that we were the exception. And I think that kind of told us a lot, that we made it that far. We were a team. We were kind of two halves of the same person, I would say. We spent so much time together. We could finish each other's sentences. You know, we would travel together. We lived together. We worked together. Everything was together. So I think that was a very unique case. I did not think that would happen. And all these things fell together in the right way. And I understand that it may not be the case for everyone. So I think those are important pointers to look at when it comes to finding your co-founder. And yeah, that's all the advice I can give because it just fell together for me.
I suddenly caught myself thinking that I would love to interview your sister too.
Oh,
to hear her perspective on like.
Oh yeah, she will probably give you a very different side of the coin, but yeah.
She never understood me. And she loved doing accounting.
She was the overbearing sister. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it would be interesting to hear what she would have to say. I think we both had to grow a lot together, and we had to really hold each other, as support systems. One of us or both of us would often be too tired to carry on, and so we had to be a tag team. And sometimes neither of us wanted to do the meeting or do the assignment, whatever it might be, rewrite a whole pitch deck. Sometimes we both don't want to do it, but someone has to do it. And so you have to really trust your partner, whoever you're going into, that they have your back. And I strongly believe that, we always had each other's back. So that is a trait that I really appreciate, and I didn't know I was going to get when I said I would help her out with her business. I didn't think that it would be 6 years long, but I am really grateful for that. So yeah, it's important.
That is wonderful insight, especially because you are it's so rare to see two people being co-CEOs and actually working together. Usually, as you mentioned, it's like a subordinate and the CEO kind of relationship more often than not. I mean, most of the time, yeah. And a question I had was, how did you first secure your first investor, and what would you recommend to people who want to start their business in terms of finding investors, or maybe trying to self-fund it first, or how does it work?
Yeah, so important disclaimer here. We never had any external investors other than Techstars. So we were completely bootstrapped the whole entire time until we got invested in by Techstars, the accelerator program. And further from the program, we didn't attract any further investment. I mean, we got quite far in terms of investor meetings, but we never actually secured investment. So I think that's an important thing, is that, some people do ask me, how do you get investors and how do you get investors' attention? I'm not the best person to ask, to be honest, because I haven't successfully done that whole thing. And I do give props to anyone who's raised investment because it's a huge undertaking. It's the most stressful thing. Like anyone I've asked that has raised investment will say that it is the most difficult and the most stressful thing they've ever done. And so it's no easy task. I'd say, the few things I've learned is attracting Techstars, firstly. I think that's the only thing I can say is the claim to fame, because we managed to get their investment. So for that, we had to really lean on a few things. So as I mentioned earlier, being genuine, being likable. We were two sisters from the UK, Asian, and with a British accent, presenting our Korean culture box. I mean, we're pretty rare. I mean, it's quite, it's not that often you come across that kind of product and combo when it comes to CEOs. And so I think for one thing, we did have that standout ability, that factor playing to our favor. The second thing I would say is that we always demonstrated our passion for our business. So we always talked about what mission that we had, which was very meaningful. And it's something that a lot of people relate to. So again, this isn't going to apply to everyone, but I think try to make it as relatable as possible and as genuine as possible. We just told people we really want to spread the word of Korean culture, and in future other cultures. We did Inspire Me Japan as well, and we wanted to branch out to other countries. We just wanted to bring people together and teach people about other people's cultures in the hopes of just more curiosity and more harmony. And I think very few people would not vibe with that or at least appreciate that. And so they found it fascinating. I don't think we really had many meetings where we were disliked in outwardly anyway. I don't know what they were thinking inside, but we generally would have very pleasant meetings, and people would generally tell us, I love what you guys are doing. Keep going, because you guys are awesome. And it was nice to be recognized in that way. But I would say that business is real and business is cruel. You can be likable, but your product can also be not the right product for investors to invest in. So I think the big thing for us was understanding that we had something really cool. We had something we really believed in, and other people seemed to believe in it too. But it wasn't going to be viable commercially or economically. And by that, I meant investors liked us, but they knew that numbers weren't adding up, and therefore they couldn't give us their money. And that makes sense too. So it's got to be a combination of all those things. You've got to have this sort of the je ne sais quoi, I guess. You have to have some sort of charisma, some sort of likability factor, as well as having something that can demonstrate product market fit, can demonstrate that you're going to make money, as well as have all the numbers add up and for investors to really take out their wallet and sign a meaningful check for you. So we never got to that initial, the last stage, but we were bootstrapped, and it is really difficult because we weren't paying ourselves for the longest time. 6 years is a long time to go through that bootstrap journey. And I'd say the only thing that kept us alive was the passion and the mission, because there wasn't anything else in terms of, a regular job would give you a salary and benefits and a team to work with, resources. We had none of those things. We really had to just purely go with our own drive. And so I think that plus resilience is really key. But I think going back to your final point, attracting investors, I do think you need to be proactive. You need to go out there, make those connections. You have to believe in your product, have a sound, pitch, and go out there and just do as many meetings as possible, because each one you'll learn something about what's not working, and try to get that feedback as much as possible. If an investor is not going to invest, just ask them, hey, look, just wondering what your thoughts are, do you have any feedback for me? Is there a reason why you said no? I think that's definitely a valid question to ask, and knowing what the fallback might be is very valuable to continuing to pivot yourself and try to get to that stage.
Right, that's very insightful, especially from a person who probably you've seen along your career, like alongside of doing your own thing, you saw other people getting investments or other people like failing at getting investments. So you definitely know a lot, even though, as you mentioned, there is a huge disclaimer that you never got like secured an investor. That's still, like 6 years of doing a startup is definitely a huge period of time to learn, and especially learn from others' experience. So I think your opinion is completely valid here. And one last question I had is, do you still fancy Korea as a place for like a good startup, a good country for starting the business? Or do you have like a different, impression of Korea right now? And what are the, maybe underwater stones for anyone who decides to penetrate the market in Korea? Like, what's your vision about this?
I think that is a very fascinating and complicated question, because having been here almost 4 years as a foreigner, I've seen many great sides and I've also seen some not so great sides. And so it's difficult to talk about without all of those things being part of it. But I think we have a huge advantage, firstly, being here as foreigners. There's definitely many challenges to living here, that's for sure. And I think when I speak to foreigners and expats in Korea, we all resonate over similar things, how the challenges are here and setting up your life and getting over the language barrier, the cultural barrier, many things. And I'm sure that will be talked about on your podcast endlessly. But I do think that being here as a foreigner, if you can carve yourself out the niche, which is you know what you're doing, you relatively have an expertise or a field that you're in, that you're confident in, and you do your research in terms of what opportunities are available in Korea, what will you roughly get paid, and how you can leverage yourself, I think we can have a very good time here, because Korea is in a state right now where it needs to go global in order to continue its growth. And everything is about going global right now. In fact, as we were walking in here today, we saw #GoGlobal on the on the wall as we were coming in.
See that.
Yeah, there's an event going on today, literally about going global, it seems. And so it's on everybody's mind, it's on everybody's lips. And if you can somehow position yourself to be helpful towards that goal, I think for sure there's so much to be done here. There's so many opportunities. The startup ecosystem here, I think, is very exciting. There is always people to meet and always people with great ideas, always great projects happening. And whether they're good products or not so good products, or startups that are trying to do something and will succeed, or startups that are probably going to fail, there's a mixture of all of that, and as with any ecosystem. But I think that I've had the most fun being in Korea, having coffee chats with exciting people endlessly. There's just always more people to meet, always more ideas exchanged. And I think that the thriving ecosystem is something that is so worth it to come here and try out. But then again, it all depends on your field. I think IT and tech is something I don't know that much about, so I'm not sure how to, advise people on whether to come for that. But I think foreigners here as well really are so genuine and helpful to each other, because we all know the struggles we can, face. So I've always met kind and genuine people through that, and we're all just trying to help each other out, especially the community that you're creating, Dimitri. So I think that it is a ripe time to come and experience it. If you can, take that break or fly here from your own country and come to experience it, I think it's definitely a worthwhile thing. And I certainly don't regret coming here. It's been amazing. So, and I've had the fortune to have worked in SaaS and also worked in like cosmetics and various different fields. I think as a foreigner, you can try your hand at different things, as long as you have your grounding in some principle or some, for me, it was marketing and global expansion and startup mentality. And then having that foreigner perspective gives you so much worth here that I think it's a very nice exchange of the foreign mentality versus understanding Korean culture and the other way around. And it's this really nice dialogue of two cultures trying to get to know each other. So I think it's beautiful, honestly, and I would recommend it.
That's one last remark I'd say about this duality of globalization you mentioned. I like it a lot because going global from Korea outside is definitely like a big thing. But I think like letting global in from outside to Korea is also a big thing, a big part of future of Korea, I'd say, especially with the that demographic situation and everything. It's like it's becoming apparent to people here and everyone else that Korea also needs to open up. I mean, you can export as much as you want. You already did that. Like South Korea already did that with K-drama, with K-pop. a lot of Korean products and K beauty and everything, K food, but letting other countries also influence Korea, I think, is a big part of the future of this country. And I think you being here actually signifies the that South Korea is taking big steps, big strides towards this goal of becoming more open, becoming more globalized inside, rather than trying to just export this culture. And I find it this trend and your presence here in this country, like especially fascinating, amazing, and I would say like exemplary in this way, because you just decided to introduce more people to Korean culture, but you ended up after that coming to Korea and being introduced to Korean culture even more, even though you started at a slightly different place. So I find it really fascinating, and I want to thank you very much for sharing your experience and expertise on our podcast. And I hope to get to talk to you again in maybe once you start a new business, maybe once you start a new startup. I would definitely want to talk to you about that and learn, your experience and how you view this country in terms of like a startup base or anything. Maybe something changes, maybe something doesn't. I actually hope that something changes, and I hope that the best parts of you with overcoming fear and your personality, they just don't change, because you're a wonderful person. And thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Dimitri. Thank you for being so kind. It's really been an honor to be on your podcast. I've enjoyed this conversation
No, it's
immensely. And I just am so grateful. So thank you. I've had such a great time.
Thank you. I love this podcast. I love
Oh, this is so wonderful.
This episode is wonderful.